I am preaching both those. One of them is done now. I don't know if you have been or if you're going to the worship service today, but the gospel reading is like training for a marathon. Mm-hmm. It is long. So be prepared to hold on to the pew in front of you. Mm-hmm. Because I'm preaching those two services, I asked Barbara Roberson if she would teach for me. She's taught before. And I'm trying to think of something I can say about Barbara that will be true and not embarrass her or me. One of the things that we have in common is our deep belief in clinical pastoral education. Barbara has served as a chaplain, a hospital chaplain. She's also an ordained Methodist minister and has served in ministry. She retired and then got unretired so she could serve how many churches in retirement?
15.
15 churches in retirement, so that she retired and unretired, and now you retired again. But she's unretiring for today to come and do this. And we have in common an addiction, which is to Louise Penny's novels about Inspector Gamache. And I just start, is that how you say his name?
Gamache.
Gamache. I'm about a third of the way through reading The Gray Wolf. What does that mean?
That's great. I didn't know you had come so far.
Okay. We'll catch up. So she loves good mystery, and she also loves a good nap, which you are not allowed to take during her talk. I'm so grateful that Barbara Roberson is teaching for us today. Barbara, come and share with us.
Well, before I really get started, I have something I really would like to take a minute to do. Last week, one of our words was gratitude. And I have great gratitude. Yes, I retired after 32 years in ministry, and I arrived in this very room very weary, very discouraged, and struggling. After 2 years, the last 2 years of my ministry were a nightmare. But I came into this room, and in a very short time, listening to Bill Curley share his wisdom, his strength, his knowledge, my load was lightened. My joy was returning, and my spiritual life took on fresh new meaning. So these 4 years in this very room has really been incredibly wonderful to me, and I want to express my gratitude to Bill. And thank you. And I have a confession to make. My glasses are up there. Excuse me. Yes. Well, yes, once before I shared with you my story. My story was through childhood and growing up and finding myself in studies and marriage and children and biochemistry, and then the big change into ministry. Exciting life, pretty wild and crazy, unexpected and ever new. And we shared my love for Thomas Merton, his stories, his poems. But just as Thomas Merton said to us over and over again, life is a journey that never ends. It continues into each new day. Life is a journey that has us in joy and in sorrow and experiences and in loss. And some of us have a part of our journey we fail to share. And so that part of my journey, I confess, I did not share with you the first time. Perhaps there were some important reasons why I left it out. Perhaps it just wasn't the time. Or perhaps I'd never really considered the importance of my own growth through these challenging times. Whatever the excuse, I want to share with you some parts of my journey that at first were scary and difficult and challenging, and now in my sharing may bring you some joy, peace, and happiness that has come to me. This part of my journey started about 30 plus years ago. My son was 18 years old. And one night he came to me and he said, "Mom, I need help." I truly hadn't a clue, I confess. I hadn't a clue he was struggling so deeply with addiction. I excused myself of my ignorance because I was struggling myself. We'd gone through divorce. I was a single mom. I had a kid in college. I had 2 kids at home. And on the excuses went. The obvious point, I was failing. But when he entered the recovery program, I got busy learning everything I could about AA and Al-Anon. Palmer Episcopal Church is down the way that direction. And every Monday at noon, I could walk from Baylor College of Medicine, where I was a biochemist, and immerse myself in the Al-Anon program. I even went to St. John the Divine every Monday night because they had a huge Al-Anon AA ministry. But it was all about his problem. It wasn't mine. 12 steps were for him. And I choose to be an observer, not a participant, except as my role of enabling, which I did spectacularly well. The years went by. In and out of the program was his pattern, and in and out was mine. And as Thomas Merton's prayer continues to speak so close to home, listen. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. And here's the important part. Nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I'm following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I'm doing, and I hope I will never do anything apart from that desire. Well, he came to me right when he was 18. 31 years later. 31 years later, struggling in and out of the program, I got another call. He was living on some property we owned down in Angleton, living alone in a trailer. "Mama," came the voice, "I've hit my bottom. This is life or death. I need help." How many times had I already heard that? How many recovery programs had I paid for? Had he gone through? How many places? But something was different this time. He told me that the night before, he had climbed a ladder, leaning against an old oak tree, where he had hung a noose earlier in the week. It was raining. He said he sat in the rain at the top of the ladder. And then he heard a voice. And the voice said, "This is not who I created you to be. Get off the ladder." And he said he found himself sitting in the water, in the mud, under the ladder, weeping and weeping all night long. "I need help, Mom. I'm ready to try again. I'm ready to choose life." So he went into recovery once again. After his 30 days in recovery, he owned nothing, had nothing. So I took him into my home again. And I could tell this time it was different. He seemed, yes, he had some fresh new joy in his life. He seemed to be on a new path. He knew where he was going. He had a goal, as hard and challenging as it might be after that many years of being a drug addict. But it was a goal for life and joy and peace that he had never known before. And he was ready. He had committed to 90 meetings in 90 days. That happened to be a Friday night. He asked me to go with him to his first meeting on that Friday night. Now, listen here. Interestingly enough, 600 feet from my house, over a fence and through a pasture, is the largest, most active AA group in all of Missouri City. 600 feet. From my back door, you can see the back door of the meeting place. He was ready to let go and let God. He was desperate enough to have courage to let go and let God. But what about me? Was I ready to let go and let God? Was I ready to let go of my fear that he would really be healed? Was I ready to let go of my need to control his life, his decisions? To let go of the power to control this disease? To let go of my sense that I was anyway in control of my own life, much less his? In other words, was I ready to deal with my false self? That was the question. The question, was I ready to take the journey differently? You see, the truth is a hard truth. That was on the screen last week. Truth is a hard truth. Father Richard Rohr, in his book, Breathing Underwater, which Curly did refer to in teaching last October, he tells us, are you ready? We are all addicts. Are you ready to hear that? Say yes, you are. We are all addicted to our way of thinking. It's a universal addiction. He laughingly calls it stinking thinking. We call that in AA all the time, stinking thinking. Substance addictions like alcohol and drugs are merely visible forms of addiction. But Richard Rohr says we're all addicted to our own way of doing things, our own defenses, and mostly our own patterned way of thinking. He goes on to say we're addicted to our fears, our own agenda, our biases, our own anger. We live out of a false self. All we see is what we want, what I think I need, what I prefer, and what hurts me. And then he says, every preference, every unmet expectation is a resentment waiting to happen. You think I should say it again? Every preference, every unmet expectation, had any of those already this morning? Is a resentment waiting to happen. Eckhart Tolle hits us a little harder. 98% of human thought, he says, is repetitive and useless. 98% of thought is repetitive. How humiliating is that? When you see how self-serving, how petty, how narcissistic, how compulsive your thinking is, you realize that you too are trapped and unfree. But now I had the freedom to move beyond that, and I chose to do the work. I had read the 12 steps a gazillion times. Every time you were in a room that has, it's on the walls in big print. Yes, I had read it. But, right, even though Bill Wilson wrote it 80 years ago for alcoholics, it wasn't applicable to me. It's applicable, those 12 steps, for all of us. When we long for spiritual enlightenment, when we long to have a truly spiritual experience, somebody tells us we must have a daily spiritual practice. And that for some can be, like me, working the steps. Those first 3 steps are the essential ones. First step, letting go. Second step, admitting my powerlessness, surrendering to a power greater than myself, and then turning my life and my will over to God as I understand God. Many years ago, while I was on a summer retreat up at Laity Lodge, if you've never been there, it's absolutely gorgeous retreat place for adults up in the Texas Hill Country. I met a Presbyterian pastor. His name was David Redding. As he walked through his own son's recovery program, David and his sons adopted the 12-step program, and at their church called it Sinners Anonymous. S.A. Sinners Anonymous. They published a book, you can find it, a workbook. And they led for many years at David's, the largest Presbyterian church in Ohio, 3 groups every Sunday morning, S.A., spiritual addicts. You see, David saw, like Richard Rohr a long time ago, we're all addicted. And our work before us of healing could be spiritually working the 12 steps. It takes a daily spiritual practice to bring healing. The 12th step itself says, having had a spiritual experience from working these steps. Having had a spiritual experience, don't you long for spiritual experiences? And work the steps. And my addiction to my false self was just as strong as my son's addiction to alcohol and drugs. It required healing, required work. Part of my daily spiritual practice is reading a psalm each morning. Many years ago, I took a sabbatical at a beautiful place called Our Lady of Guadalupe Abbey in Pecos, New Mexico. A Catholic abbey set with the Pecos River running right through it. God is there all the time. And each morning, of course, we had worship before breakfast and worship before lunch and worship before supper. And each time, nuns and the priests sang the psalms. And so I would look around for the words so I could sing with them, and there were no words. Neither did the priests or the nuns have printed words. They had sung these psalms so many times they were on their hearts. 150 psalms, right? They'd been singing them over and over, all 150, and they sang them with such joy and purpose. And so I decided to read a psalm each morning. You notice there are 150, I just said that. If you start on January 1st, one day at a time, by the end of May, you've read it through. So then June 1st, you start again, and by October 27th, you've read it through a second time. And October 28th, you start again and early. And then as you end in December, you have read the Psalms through 2.5 times almost. Now, I confess I do read a modern version because some of the Psalms are a little harsh if you read them in SRV or other translations. But Nan Merrill has a beautiful book called Psalms for Praying, where she has written the words, at least in words that I can relate to, beautiful Psalms. So reading a psalm a day has been a part of my spiritual practice forever. And each time I read them, something new, it's amazing, pops out that I had never noticed before. Something old becomes clearer. On February 1st, I was reading Psalm 32. That's where you go if you've started on January 1st. Listen to what jumped out at me. I admitted my faults to the Most High and made known my regrets. I cried out, "Forgive me, O Comforter, for those times I have sinned in thought, words, and deeds." And the Beloved created a new heart in me. Sounds like the steps, right? My goodness, maybe the psalmist had a 12-step recovery book? Step 4, admitted my faults, making a searching and moral inventory of ourselves. I will tell you, that's the hardest of all the 12. It will take you weeks to honestly make a searching and moral inventory of yourself. And step 5, admitted to God and another human being my wrongs. Days later, I read Psalm 39 and listened to what it said. "And now, O loving presence, for what do I wait? My hope is in you. Forgive me all my mistakes. Remove the blemishes from my heart. Look upon me with mercy that I may know joy and live in the realm of love." Wow. But you know what? Spiritual reading has the potential for becoming a prayer, a kind of event in which true transformation of consciousness takes place. It's a subtle and unexpected gift from God. Thomas Merton gives truth to the fact that the self that begins the journey is not the self that arrives. Remember that from the prayer. "I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore I will trust you, though I may seem lost. And in the shadow of death, I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me alone to face my perils." He goes on to say, our true self is not some obscure and hidden identity. Our true self is rather, get this, our whole self before God. It's the self that the Father created us to be. Merton's understanding of our true self, taking time for daily spiritual practice, thank you, Thomas Merton, offers us the promise of bringing our entire life into a loving communion with a loving presence. Such communion is beyond words. Early in our Friday night adventures, my going with my son, so I've been doing this for 6.5 years, I began to see something amazing that I had never noticed before. Every AA meeting, whether you're here or in China or Italy or Germany, because they're all over the world, right? Every AA meeting starts with prayer. Every AA meeting ends with prayer. And no matter what the agenda is, if it's a new member meeting, if it's a speaker meeting, if it's a big book study, there is something incredibly spiritual in that room going on. Perhaps it's the vulnerability of the people there. People who are willing to share their story no matter how dark it is. Humility, vulnerability. Perhaps it's a sheer feeling of acceptance in the room, the community that's in those rooms. Maybe I call it peace. At this point of the journey, I had been a pastor for over 30 years. How many worship services have I led? And yet, over and over in an AA meeting, I always felt the presence of my higher power. I've always felt love and acceptance of God, and yes, more than I have, I'm sorry, in many a worship experience in a church. At more than one meeting, I would hear stories being told, stories with the whole truth and nothing but the truth, being shared by someone vulnerable enough to let us see all their brokenness, their remorse, their sorrow, their guilt, their shame, their embarrassment. We all have stories to tell, every one of us. And when humility and honesty and truthfulness are in the room, anything can happen. The stories are received with love and appreciation and tears and loving support. Speaker and those listening join together and dance in this mutual honesty and vulnerability, grace and forgiveness. I will add that Father Richard Rohr, in speaking at one time in Albuquerque, said that Bill Wilson was a man inspired by God. To start this program 80 years ago, he was definitely inspired by God. My son attends a minimum at 6.5 years sober, 7 meetings a week minimum. Variety of meetings and variety of places, speaker meetings, big book meetings, celebration, birthday meetings. Some of them are in a local rented space, like the one 600 feet from my house. But his Monday night meeting is a dinner meeting. The whole idea started by a couple of guys 25 years ago when they decided they'd like to have dinner together, get to know each other, socialize for an hour, and then have their hour meeting. And so they began taking turns every Monday going to someone's house and doing dinner and a meeting. Well, about 3 years ago into his sobriety, we got to join this group, and now we're a part of the beautiful cycle of gathering and sharing. Well, when it's at my house, and I've already had it 3 times this year, it's been exciting, truly a delight. My part is I'm the cook. Cooking for 25 men is not easy. But I love it. I love every moment of it, from shopping to preparation, planning, cooking, serving, cleaning. All day I cook. I'm filled with joy because they're coming to our house, and I'm so excited. And I cook and I prepare, and they come and they eat, and they go upstairs, and I go upstairs because it's a closed meeting. But the love has already come upstairs. I love it. They call me Mom, whether they're young or older. They greet me, one another, with hugs and enthusiasm. There's such energy in the house. I've become famous. I now cook the best enchiladas in town. 5 huge enchilada casseroles. What it requires, with all the trimmings, the chips and the salsa and the salad and the dessert, to fill their hungry selves. And every bit of it is filled with love. Each evening begins with prayer, and since I'm the hostess, I get to be in charge of the prayer. We hold hands in a big circle, and I ask them to look, not close their eyes. And they say, don't close your eyes in a prayer. No, I want you to look into each other's face. And I want you to see the hope and the joy and the love that's in this room coming from one another. And then I say, let's eat. That's the power of prayer. The happiness, the joy shared in this room, the awesome gift of a loving power. I feel the joy for days after. You see, there's so much sacredness about any AA or Al-Anon meeting, because I think the vulnerability, the honesty, and the humility in the room. No secrets. Stories are shared. Struggles are confessed. Total acceptance is offered. Because why? Because each one who has worked the program, all 12 steps, has come to 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of working these steps. We share this. And that's exactly what they are doing. We practice these principles in all of our affairs. Practice, practice, practice. 12-step work is never done, never completed. It's a constant part of true commitment to active daily spiritual life. Richard Rohr says, we do not truly comprehend any spiritual things until we give it away. We do not comprehend any spiritual things until we ourselves give it away. You see, spiritual gifts increase only by using them as a result of working the steps. And then we give it away. It's not something we can create or earn on our own. It's all grace anyway. I have one more story to share of grace. Remember from last Sunday, Bill talked about what are the odds? One more story. He said, what are the odds of one person in 100 being sick, having great loss? And then he made a statement, having a wreck. On January 2nd of this year, it was a Friday night. Where were we going? To an AA meeting. We were driving to the Friday night speaker meeting at the Spring Branch Club off I-10 and Blaylock. To get there, we were driving, I live in Missouri City. So we were driving up Beltway 8. After going through the toll gates near Memorial Drive, I heard a bang. I looked to my left. In the next lane over was a car spinning totally out of control. It was headed toward my side of the car. I moved to the lane on my right. My son was looking back and he yelled, "Get ready, Mom, we're going to be hit." And the loudest, most frightening sound and jolt did happen to us as we were hit from behind. And then quiet. And we took a deep breath, and my son and I looked at each other. Are you okay? Yes. Are you okay? Yes. And then, at the same moment, we just both said one word: gratitude. Gratitude. We moved. There were more sounds of screeching, more bangs behind us. I was able to pull off the road. The truck that hit us pulled over. Other cars were pulling off the road. I immediately dialed 911. "Where are you?" said the operator. I said, "Beltway 8, Memorial Drive." "Oh dear, that's a toll road authority. Just a minute, hold the line." When I finally spoke to toll road person, "Police are on the way, sweetheart, don't worry." And sure enough, within probably 2 minutes, fire trucks, police, EMT, all arrived to help. We got out to survey the damage. From the back window on, there was no car. The car was total. Glass all over the freeway, parts of my trunk and bumper in little pieces on the freeway, police, ambulance, the fire truck pulled over so he could block those 3 lanes so that other cars who were screeching behind him didn't get into all the glass. Eventually, we were all towed. Up Memorial Drive, there's a huge shopping center, lots of place to park, and all the tow trucks with all the cars that had been involved, and police and ambulance all were up there. It was an experience I do not care to repeat, except for the total gratitude I was feeling that we were not hurt. We had no car. So my son called an AA friend who arrived very soon. We talked to others who also had been hit by someone. We took photos, especially info on the truck that hit us. By the way, it was a very large truck, a tree trimmer truck, towing a 15-foot trailer full of logs and branches and trees. That is what hit us from behind at approximately 50 miles an hour. Gratitude multiplied that with that force I was taking photos of, we were not hurt. Soon the police were ready to dismiss us. They had everything they wanted from us. With 3 of us looked at each other, and at the same time, we all 3 said, "We need a meeting." How many of you have gone to an AA meeting after being hit in an accident? A friend, off we went. We arrived at the Spring Branch Club where we had been headed the hour before, not long after it had begun. A friend was speaking. He was the speaker for the night, telling his story. I had time to breathe. I had time to let go and let God. I had time to just be present in that meeting, leaving the terror that we had experienced outside. And all through his story, he spoke of his higher power at work in his life for his 32 years of sobriety. After closing remarks, it is the pattern, as I said, for every AA meeting to close in the Lord's Prayer. You all stand up, and imagine it's a room about the size of this one, and it had 70 to 80 people in it. Imagine us all standing up around the edge of the room, holding hands. And someone is asked to start, and he says, "Whose father?" And we all respond, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." And the tears rolled down my cheeks as I felt the incredible warmth of the presence of love in that room. What a night it had been, and yet what a gift to come to those rooms and feel the strength of those folks who've had their hearts come through the darkest nights of their souls into the joy and strength of the holy presence of the beloved in that room. In this very room, there's quite enough love for all of us. And in this room, there's quite enough joy for all of us. And there's quite enough hope, and there's quite enough peace to chase away any gloom. For Jesus, Lord Jesus, is in this very room. I'm so glad my journey continues, that in this very room, our minds are stretched into new ways of thinking and living, that the gift of Bill Curley and Holly challenge the old rusty ways of thinking and give us new insights. I'm more grateful than I can ever express for the gift and guidance God gave to Bill Wilson 80 years ago to develop a program called Alcoholics Anonymous and all the gates it opened to more new ways of being in the world to thousands and thousands of followers. Gratitude. If I have a t-shirt, it would say gratitude. I close with this. All who surrender to the love of the great mystery, whose hearts are merciful and kind, will go into beauty and walk with grace. And all who reverence love's eternal flame will know forever love's companioning presence. Thank you.